So we're talking here about like towards 8 billion, right?
Sounds about right.
So,
yep.
So then I didn't know that, by the way. So I was not really aware of that. You move so much money. Welcome to Worldwide In podcast, brought to you by Studio Alpha.capital, an accelerator for software startups. My name is Fabian, and you know the big problems in this world can only be solved by entrepreneurs or people that work closely with founders, like our guest today, David Lee. Hi, David.
Hey, how's it going, Fabian?
Good. Back in Switzerland.
Good to see you back home.
Yeah. So, yes, just for the listeners, you're from San Francisco, right?
Yeah, born and raised in the Bay Area and live in San Francisco now, correct.
And yeah, you just got up, right? It's 10 o'clock, so you got up for like 20 minutes ago, right?
Yeah, exactly. I get up when my kids get up. Let's put it that way.
Okay, 6 o'clock.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Same here. Although my kids are a little bit older than yours, they're 14 and 16. But they have to catch the public transportation to get to town to where they go to their high school. And yeah, we get up at 6 also, unfortunately.
Exactly.
So let me give a little bit background about you. So David Lee, a strategic powerhouse and influential advisor in the world of startups and corporate development. David's professional journey is a testament to his leadership and strategic acumen. From leading Lyft's 2.3 billion IPO and orchestrating over 5 billion in pre-IPO financing to steering the M&A activity, his contributions have been instrumental in shaping the company's trajectory. That's pretty impressive. So we're talking here about like towards 8 billion, right?
Sounds about right. Yep.
So then I didn't know that, by the way. So I was not really aware of that. You move so much money, or you have moved. So prior to this, his time at Lyft, David held key roles at Electronic Arts, EA, where he led M&A counsel on a variety of crucial mergers, share purchases, asset acquisitions, and strategic investments. His work with EA, mobile games, marketing, and digital distribution organizations continues to be an industry benchmark. But David's influence extends beyond his role at these renowned organizations. He has been an active venture partner at Mountain Ventures, that's a French name,
But just about. Yeah, that's right. Montage, yeah.
Montage Ventures.
Yeah.
How exactly? So since 21. He also serves as an advisor at Luma Health, a role he has held since 2017. His most recent venture is with RevShop Incorporation, where he has been advising since 3 months. In addition, he has offered his expertise to Motion Intelligence, a company that was acquired by Cambridge Mobile Telematics last year. In his roles, David has consistently demonstrated his ability to drive strategy and lead execution for M&A, strategic partnerships, capital market transactions, and corporate strategy. His passion for his work is evident in his commitment to continuous growth and development. So when you look back, what was your favorite time and why?
Oh, man, that's a good question. I have enjoyed every part of my career. I think I obviously wouldn't be here without that, but I think it was those early days at Lyft. I joined Lyft in the end of 2014, beginning of 2015, when, I was probably employee about 250. The company eventually grew to about 5,000 employees. And it was that period of time, in those early days, 2015, 2016, 2017, that were like the team that was there. We kind of call it lightning in a bottle. We just feel very lucky to have been part of that immense amount of growth, have some influence on that growth, and just being part of the wave and riding that wave. It was incredible. I'll never forget it. And it was exhausting, but at the same time, such an informative experience for me.
Okay, at Lyft, has there been a moment where you thought, hey guys, we're not going to make it? Because when you grow this fast,
yeah,
then you cannot avoid that sometimes the right hand doesn't know what the left hand does, and we're not talking about the feet, right?
Yeah, I would say, yeah, absolutely. There are moments and times where we just didn't know, whether or not we were going to be able to survive. I think, fundraising was an extremely important part of being able to fuel the business towards a successful IPO. But even with not just fundraising, but the strategy, entering markets, developing relationships and partnerships with regulators, convincing the public to use our service. And then, you can't really talk about the Lyft story without talking about kind of our 800-pound gorilla competitor in Uber. They were growing extremely fast as well. They were raising money, faster than I think any other private startup in history. And we were up against a very voracious competitor in Travis Kalanick. And so I'm proud of what we were able to do. But yes, to answer your question, Fabian, there were definitely moments where we looked at ourselves in the mirror and just said, how are we going to get through this? Because the challenges, frankly, never stopped in my 8 years there. But they were the most acute and most pressing, I would say, in those first 4 or 5 years I was there.
I think that's important to know because we had several times we had this experience. Either it was 9/11 or it was financial crisis or it was a self-made issue. But when you are in such a situation where you get up or it keeps you up at night and you just think, I really have to talk to the CEO and I think we really have an issue here and we don't have no idea how we get out of that. So how did you then, in this situation, how did you just went going? So what happened what were your method to not give up or say, you know what, I get another job or,
Yeah. It's a great question. I think, even thinking back, I would say while there were the number and volume of challenges that we had in the first 4 or 5 years were really intense, existential to the company often. I think that probably the biggest test that the company ever faced, at least in my time there, was the drop after COVID, the drop in business. Our revenue dropped 75-80% within 3 weeks. And we were a multi-billion-dollar company. And I don't think there's many companies that have really experienced that level of drop into their business, essentially overnight. And I was, shaken by it. I think everybody at the company was, but I think I was also extremely impressed to this day. I continue to be by what the founders, John and Logan, were able to do. We spoke the day of that drop, and I was amazed by their resolve, the confidence that they had to get through it. I think in those moments, I think there's 2 pieces. I think one, you have to have a North Star of what the mission is of the company, what you're trying to accomplish at a very high level. And then you also have to marry it really well with the micro, the tactical side of it, which is, you control and you solve for the known knowns. You try to understand what the known unknowns are. And you frankly try to just skip the unknown unknowns. Like you just can't try to do that. And, I'm sure you experienced it. I'm sure everybody listening to this podcast probably went through a little bit of those unknown unknowns during COVID, which is like, what is going to happen? Where are we even going? What is the world going to do? Are we going to get through this? And, I got preoccupied with it, probably more so maybe than most, young kids, family. But at the same time, when you think about kind of getting through those challenges, again, you got to focus on kind of, again, remind yourself what the North Star is, bring it back to first principles. Why are we doing all this? How do we do it? Why do we believe in it? And then try to control and solve for the things that are in front of you tactically that you do know about. Try to figure out what the things that you don't know about, what they are and where they exist. But you also have to push out the stuff that you just can't control for, you can't actually influence. It's easier said than done. I will say that. And again, watching them work and operate during those immense times of stress, I was very impressed, and it really helped my resolve to make sure that I'm here for a reason.
So, so your approach was first thing first. Today is today, and what will be tomorrow, we will see. We solve at the moment what is on the table.
Exactly.
And tangible.
Exactly.
And we take it one after all. We don't lose energy by thinking what if, when, then, if then.
Yeah.
Doesn't help.
Yeah. Yeah, and you can spot. And look, I think that's easier said than done. I think I probably go back and forth between being able to have resolve and focus, and then having your mind spin and spiral. But you have to remind yourself that no one, frankly, I think in this world is ever successful by spiraling. That just doesn't work.
Okay.
Yeah.
So these issues may occur when you have a tech startup or like a startup per definition, which is meant to grow fast.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
To grow fast, you have risks. High risk as if you don't have to grow this fast. So what are the key elements that a startup needs to focus and to achieve this rapid growth?
Yeah, I mean, to state a little bit of the obvious, like you have to have product market fit. I think spending time figuring out what metrics are important to be able to demonstrate that, to make sure that you are achieving that product market fit, that there is a market for your product, that you are not creating something that is just for the sake of its creation, but instead actually solving a need in the market, and that customers will not just come to you, but come back to you for that product. So that's kind of the obvious. I think what beyond that is being able to build a repeatable process, whatever that's, if that's sales, if that's customer growth, it's that acquisition, or any combination of that, to be able to kind of build that flywheel and kind of continue and create that momentum and kind of ride that momentum wave. I think beyond that is scaling the company and the infrastructure of the company to meet that, hopefully, accelerating demand and accelerating product market fit. To be able to do that, I think is, the infrastructure side, the obvious side of it, the engineering side of it, the, AWS side of it, that's kind of the table stakes. I think the other part is to be able to build the leadership team, as well as everyone below that leadership team, to be able to continue to scale and meet that demand where it is, but also enable and encourage that growth beyond kind of where the demand is currently. It's a lot. You're juggling a lot of balls in the air at that moment, but frankly, that's what high growth startup kind of work is, basically.
Okay. You were talking about this hyper growth at Lyft.
Yeah.
What was this, ignition? How do you say ignition?
Yeah.
Moment
Yeah.
where this hyper growth really like the plane that just gets airborne and then goes like afterburner. What was it?
Yeah, it was. I think it was probably twofold. I think, there have been times people have said, what is Lyft really? What is rideshare? Isn't it just, Google Maps plus a marketplace plus eBay? If you smash those two things together, you have Lyft. And I always had an issue with that when that was raised, because what it really is a complete supply and demand balancing. And to do that, you're really thinking about, frankly, human nature, how to incentivize each individual driver, to be able to get out of bed and not just stay at home with their family on New Year's Eve, because that's when you're going to have the biggest demand. So it is, shaping that marketplace, shaping that balance is a real-time, minute-by-minute effort. And I think that was what I was proud that we were able to build. Once we were able to do that, that's when we were able to kind of fuel that growth, that we were able to balance, so that when somebody was a passenger is about to download the app or opens it for the first time, that we've already done all the work so that ETA is 3 minutes. That is a lot of back end work, both on an engineering perspective, but also and a technical perspective, but also market operations, incentives, you name it. We had to figure it out to be able to deliver that level of service. I think the other part was really convincing and getting mind share that there was trust in the platform itself. I think that once we figured that out, it was, again, kind of really starting that rocket ship kind of growth. The way I kind of always described it and what I was proud of is the longer I stayed at Lyft, the more people in my family used it. When I joined Lyft, I had to convince my entire family what it was, why would I want to join, seemed kind of, was it dangerous, was it safe, how could they rely on it? And then the next, couple months, then my sister's using it. Then couple months, my parents are using it. And then I was really proud when my grandparents used it for the first time, a couple years after. And it was really convincing kind of bigger and bigger cohorts that it was a platform that was going to solve their needs, address their concerns, and do it in a safe and reliable way.
So simply spoken, you have to make sure that people. So I try to make it dimensional. So the product is the service.
Yeah.
To have a ride from A to B.
Yeah.
That this service has been fulfilled, you need the drivers.
Yeah.
Who are not your employees.
Yeah.
So that's kind of community. You can manage this driver community.
Yeah.
That's what you mentioned. So that they get up in the morning, that they're ready to drive also after midnight, New Year's Eve. So then the clients, you have, on one hand, you have to reach the client so that they know about this product. So that we call the platform, right? And that they trust. So they see there is a need. We know that. People have to go from A to B. That's clear. But then, because we know that there's a need, you need to gather their trust. That's the point.
Right. And so, exactly. And so, those are all the different elements. And, this is, in one sense, it's a little bit specific to rideshare, but in another sense, it's not. What you're really doing is you're building up in any kind of startup, if you're selling to something or someone, you're building a group of stakeholders, and you need to make sure that they all understand that there is something here that is repeatable, that it is reliable, that it is something I will come back to. And however you do that, whatever market you're in, B2C, B2B, it doesn't really matter. At the end of the day, those stakeholders need to know when I show up for this service, or whether I'm ready to pay for this service, or I'm ready to utilize this service, or product, or order this product, that it will be reliable, that it will be consistent, that I can depend on it. And that goes for every part of your value chain. And when you can do that is when you can start to really build that motion where it's, that is where the scale will come.
So then we talk about this flywheel that really goes by itself.
Right. Exactly.
So talking about startups, or like this fast growth. So Lyft was a startup once in the beginning as well.
Mm-hmm.
And in the beginning, as far as I have read on the internet, it was started at the university in Santa Cruz.
Santa Barbara.
And it was meant to be, so when they go back home over weekend, so that they have like a community where they can join and drive with them in the car, right?
Yeah, exactly. So the company initially started as a product at a company called Zimride, which was focused on carpooling for university students. Exactly. So, you're going home for the holidays, you may not have a car, somebody else might have a car, they might be heading in the same direction. And it was a platform by which you could match people that are looking for rides with people that are able to provide those rides and enable that kind of transportation.
That's interesting, because the first time in my life, back then when I was a triathlete, I went to Berkeley. I stayed there and trained with there was like a little community of triathletes. And in 92, and in 92, when I wanted to go to San Francisco from Berkeley, I could walk down, there were a certain point before the Bay Bridge started.
Right. Yep.
And there was a carpooling in 92. So when Lyft started, so the first company, it was nothing really new. So get to the point where Lyft and went public. So there are many pivots. Let's talk now a little bit about this, okay?
Yeah. It's a really good point. I think you're hitting on something. And frankly, what's funny is that our founders actually live in Berkeley, and they are very familiar with that
Okay.
that area, that kind of carpooling, ad hoc kind of carpooling, as I'd call it. And, I would say the bridge between what you just described and what you experienced to where we, eventually got to is figuring out how to build that trust, those cultural norms, to be able to do it at scale, right? I mean, that Berkeley community, everybody's familiar with it. They know that if they go there, it's generally safe, that they understand that these people are going to be getting from point A to point B. There are accepted norms that are part of that. And how do you go from a very small community that is very in the know to doing it on a national scale? And so again, that's kind of going back to what I said about like what the secret sauce of Lyft is building that trust, building those cultural norms at a great at volume. And it's easier said than done. I think it was market by market, building a brand and brand awareness, building, pioneering kind of insurance and safety on the platform with the first $1 million TNC policy for insurance and, any liability. And so as a result, we were able to, again, slowly by market, convince people that those norms that you might have experienced in Berkeley were able to be transferred or accepted in Atlanta or Austin or Boston. Being able to do that, it again takes you got to have a good read as far as human nature and how to do that. Obviously, you're relying on technology and different solutions, but at the end of the day, it is a human nature problem that you're trying to solve.
Okay, so so now the question is, and that's why these companies are very agile, organized, like in weekly or very short-term sprints.
Yeah.
Because they, on a weekly basis, they always try to improve, and they get to a pivot. With not explicit. Because they're just trying to improve on a weekly basis, and they basically do a pivot in very small steps and don't really realize on a weekly basis that they are pivoting.
Got it.
Is it a strategic top-down decision where then the board says, "Hey guys, we're working in the wrong direction. We have to change directions."
Right.
Or is it both? Can you, or in other terms, at Lyft, can you remember the major pivot that made Lyft what it became then?
I mean, there are two examples. I would say, as you described earlier, and we just talked about, the company was born as Zimride, which is a carpooling platform. We had a hackathon where they built what they initially wanted. It was essentially Zimride Instant. So essentially being able to do that supply and demand matching, so the driver and the passenger matching. But instead of saying, "Hey, I want to go home for the holidays in a week, and do you have a car?" It was, within the matter of minutes. Once that product was developed and that idea was implemented at this hackathon, the entire company, particularly the founders, recognized that this was something that, if it could be solved, was something that could be adopted and solve so many people's needs, and was really what the market was looking for. The market, if you think about product market fit, the market may have had some interest or need for the carpooling platform, but there's essentially a ceiling to how many people will need a ride or can predict that they need a ride in a couple of weeks. That it's really solving kind of a specific niche when it's like university students. And instead, this instant product was where the real demand was. And the entire company changed. I mean, not just the brand and but the service, everything that today as to the service came from that moment. I think it was in 2012. And so it's not an easy decision, because that one was more of a top-down, like, wow, we have something really impressive here, something special. Let's pivot and do that. And that's where Lyft pioneered, ride sharing as you know it today, which was, a personal vehicle delivering rides to people en masse. That's where it was born from. So that's an example of a very top-down kind of big strategic pivot. But to your point earlier, there are also tactical pivots that happen each and every day. I almost want to not call them pivots, but just like shaping the tactics as to how are you addressing and meeting that market demand. So things like shared rides, electric vehicles, those are not pivots, but those are additional products or different ways of focusing and prioritizing to make sure that you are continuously delivering that market, meeting that market demand as the market may shift or change, or consumer demand or customer demand may shift.
So when we talk about how Lyft developed itself into this success, it sounds like that Lyft was the one who invented what we know as today this riding service.
Yes, right.
Means hence Uber is a copycat, correct?
I mean, all I'll say is I think what the product that we developed, it's continuously used and has only grown since the day we started it in 2012. So, whereas, and we've always been very proud of being able to pioneer that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, we leave it like this, huh?
Okay.
Yeah. So, what are, in your opinion, when you're also engaged in startups for many years. In parallel, you were a coach. Also, I think we were an investor and an advisor to startups or venture firms. So when you have these startups and you talk to them, to the founder teams, what are the characteristics and capabilities that they need to execute on these, this capability to pivot?
Yeah.
It's flexibility,
Yeah. I think, I mean, it's a really good question. I think that they have to your point, like they have to be a flexible thinker, that they can't be too married. It's finding a perfect balance, right? I think successful entrepreneurs, and particularly founders that I find, are the ones that are, for lack of a better word, obsessed with this idea or this problem and trying to solve it, right? They are focused on a sector, an industry, a consumer problem, whatever it is, that they have been thinking about this for some time, that they believe that they have an idea that will address it, and that they are almost singularly focused on that. And all of their thinking, whether that's like at work, in front of a meeting, in front of a team, or, driving to work, or thinking about it in the shower, like, it is part of them. They live, eat, and breathe it. At the same time, that balance it has to be balanced with flexible thinking as well. You can't be too rigid in, I'm the only one that can solve this, my solution is the only solution. You have to be open to feedback that the market is giving you at the end of the day, right? If you launch the product and you're not getting the signups, or traction is not there, you have to be humble enough to be able to accept that and incorporate that. You can still focus on the overall whatever problem that you're trying to solve, but you have to be able to be able to take input, whether that's, again, from the market, from your team, from your leadership team, or from your co-founders or your investors, and be able to balance that with what you're seeing.
Yeah, I don't know if Lyft was offered to be acquired. Was that the case?
I mean, we've had conversations in the past. I mean, things come up here and there. Without going into the details, I mean, I think we had a lot of interest throughout our entire history from different players for different variety of reasons.
Can you, since we know from your career that you are very experienced in terms of IPO and especially M&A, so in a nutshell, when you are a founder and you're growing, okay, you don't make any profit, but you're growing, and then you have new opportunities to get money, to have new investors, strong investors, better network. On the other hand, nearly the same people approach you and say, I want to buy your company. So simply, what does happen in your brain? How do you decide whether side you should choose?
Yeah, I mean, I'm a believer of the best strategy to be acquired is to just build the best company possible. I think not that I've seen companies focus too much on an acquisition strategy. You know, how do we build a company that will be acquired? I think that might, you know, give success in the long run, but at the same time, I think you're going to be solving per you know, 2 degrees away from what you have in front of you, which is like building a successful company, building customers, you know, finding product market fit, whatever that is, like, you know, and driving sales. If you start to think about, okay, if I do this so that I can, you know, make somebody else happy, whether that's an acquirer or the like, you're not going to really be doing either, frankly. I think it dilutes your focus, it dilutes your priorities. And so I, you know, it sounds a little bit maybe a little cheesy, but I really do believe that, you know, building the best strategy to be acquired is to just build the right and strongest company you can. I think also part of that is you know, building a startup, and especially one that's you know, can hopefully achieve like a very high level of growth. That takes a lot out of you. I mean, it is a full court game that you're going to be playing for a number of years. So you don't have the time or the ability to kind of distract yourself thinking about another, you know, path of, well, if we do this, that could be successful, but will it make us attractive to a company to acquire us? Like, you don't have the luxury of that kind of focus, right? To focus like that. So yeah, my recommendation is always just to focus on the company that you're building. You know, build the best, strongest company you can. If you do that, the market will recognize it in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah, so very simple. Focus on your mission and run.
Yeah, and run. Right, exactly.
Focus. Okay, so last but not least, here a question. So pivoting, because growing fast,
yeah,
and then getting all these, you know, more people, more clients, everything gets bigger on a very fast scale. Talking about leadership, how can you elaborate a little bit about growing fast and keeping together the team and the culture, and you know, so that, as we mentioned in the beginning, that the right hand knows what the left hand does, and it's the other way around.
Yeah, I would say you know, my first thing is a hard one, which is you're moving as fast as possible. You need as much help as possible, as fast as possible, especially if you achieve kind of this like hyperscale, hyper growth. But you have to temper that with, in my mind, taking your time, especially with your leadership team, but also anybody who is in, you know, any kind of important position at the company, and spending time on that hire. I have been in situations where I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm totally overwhelmed. I really could use the help. You know, the hiring process is taking too long. Why don't I just pick like who's I think is maybe the best, and just let's move forward, right? Let's just get it done. And that never really works. The amount of time that you might save from that kind of expedited decision making, you will pay for it in the end, whether that's you know, the debt that you might have to kind of repay after that when that hire doesn't work out, or, you know, you've demotivated the rest of the team because that person is not the right fit. That is insurmountable. It can sink companies. And so, you know, as painful as it sometimes is, I mean, I found myself, you know, making sure, combing through resumes, restarting processes late into the night, you know, like looking at resumes at like midnight, because I'm like, I just want to make sure that we find the right person. So I would say very much that. I think the other piece is, I personally tried to find empathetic leaders, leaders that were in it because they believed and they liked people, and they liked managing people, leading people, cultivating people, developing people. Because the reason is one, those are the type of people that I work well with, that I, you know, enjoy, you know, spending time with. But two, you will not be able to influence and talk to every single member of your team, especially as your company grows, right? And so you need to understand, when you're not in the room, how will they act? How will they present? How will they show up when they're with the rest of the team? And that will continue on as you grow your leadership, your structure. There's going to be less and less meetings that you're going to be able to be a part of. But you're going to want to know how those people that you have delegated and you've empowered, how they're going to show up. And again, it's through that hiring process, but also just spending a lot of time focusing on what that personality is that you want, that replicates, frankly, what you bring to the table. But also, adds to the overall capabilities of the company and the culture. I think culture is probably the hardest thing to scale. I can only give some feedback on that. I mean, again, I think it comes down to personality of the leadership team, and vetting if people are who they say they are, whether they will show up the way that they present in an interview, whether they are in it for the right reasons, and whether they can kind of lead by example instead of just by shouting orders at people. It's not easy. And it depends on what kind of culture you're trying to build too. Every company it's really up to the founders to kind of build that top down. But once you've arrived at it, it's really spending that time in that interview process.
So thank you very much for your time, David. If you could only give our founders one tip, what would it be?
I mean, I would really say it is about, maybe if I can give two tips. I would say the first one is really remember what you're doing it for. You will be tested and you will forget. There will be moments where challenges like pile up, you're told no too many times, or it just looks impossible. And being able to step back and actually take a breath and remember what your first principles are, why you wanted to start this business in the first place, why it is a passion that you are trying to, chase, and your dream is what it is. It sounds easy, but sometimes you really get into the weeds, and taking a moment and stepping back is something that I found to be valuable in my own career. I've also seen other people be able to do it. And I think it's really important because, your company's going to move super fast. Life already moves fast. Your company's going to move even faster. So being able to remind yourself. And then two, I would go back to that leadership, that hiring. It's, really spending the time, but also spending time on finding people that you want to spend time with. I mean, this is going to be a slog. It's going to be hard. Working in startups, it can be attract a lot of interesting people. Sometimes you're going to say, oh, wow, this candidate I'm talking to has done all these things, or they've had this amazing career, or, they've been very successful, or whatever it is. That's helpful. It's a data point. But at the end of the day, don't get too enamored and fall in love with what they've done in the past, because sometimes they might have gotten lucky. It might have been the team. You don't know, right? Spend time vetting. Do you want to spend time with these folks? Do you believe that they will be able to carry the message, carry the culture of the company? And frankly, do you get along with them, and do you want to spend time with them?
So thank you, David. See you soon again as a speaker at Studio Alpha Accelerator in the summer batch. We're looking already very excited, looking forward. And yeah, that's it for today. Please write comments, thumbs up, subscribe to our YouTube channel, and see you next week.
Great. Thanks so much, Fabian. It was a pleasure. Thanks for having me.
No, it's still the same. It's still good. Okay.
Good. That sounds good. That sounds very clear.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Okay, I make it a little bit closer to me. I just I got this microphone new before I left 2 months ago. So I'm not very experienced with this mic.
You look experienced. You look like you're gonna record a rap album right now with Jay-Z.
Yeah, so like a producer. Yeah, so I mean, you and we know the most important is that it looks good. Okay.
That's right. That's what I spent my whole life trying to do.